In Asuka's first episode that she is in, episode 8, she is portrayed as a boisterous, confident young girl, but it is a facade to hide the deep insecurities that dwell inside of her. This mask that Asuka portrays to the world would eventually break, and the true person would be revealed. But the question that can be asked is how can a character that seems like a normal, confident person change into someone who spirals into madness and depression? Well, to understand Asuka's mental collapse at the end of Neon Genesis Evangelion, we have to go back and look at her childhood and how neglectance can destroy somebody. These insecurities that dwell from Asuka come from a broken childhood. This childhood stems from her mother's neglectance and her father's abandonment. After Asuka's mother devolved into insanity, she replaced Asuka with a doll, making Asuka feel more neglected and abandoned. One of the most dramatic parts of Asuka's childhood was when Asuka would pass her test of becoming an Eva pilot, and when she ran to tell her mother, she would discover the deceased mother hanging from the ceiling. The one thing that Asuka craved as a child was the love and attention from her parents, and she never received that love and attention that she needed as a kid, thus making Asuka who she is and was today. Asuka wants to pilot the Eva to find her self-worth, to find some reason to keep on living, to make herself important to someone. And in the end, she did it. She was able to become an Eva pilot to make herself important, to make people want her, and to make people remember her. However, Asuka uses the Eva and being an Eva pilot to try and mask the deep insecurities within her. Being an Eva pilot gives her a crutch to try to have a self-worth, but that's all it is, a crutch to prop up her own insecurities. Asuka's insecurities are the fear that not only is she inherently worthless and unlovable, but that she will be replaced because she is not special or unique. This then leads to how Asuka acts towards others, and the actions she does to prove her existence to herself, to others, and the world. Asuka has both a massive ego and an incredibly tiny ego, a fragile sense of self-worth and self-esteem. So to cope with this, she compensates it with an over-the-top attitude and confidence. Asuka essentially has a weird mix of having just self-awareness to have a shallow ego that is threatened by everything, but at the same time thinks of herself as the best, while at the same time hating herself and thinking that she's worthless. I think for most of the show, she is generally full of herself, thinking that she is a great person. There's not much insecurity during the early parts of the show until later in the show when she starts failing the sync tests. The relationships that Asuka formed also contributed to her insecurities. She hates Shinji because in her eyes, he is a pathetic, passive loser whose only reason for existence is to pilot the Eva. She hates Rei because in her eyes, Rei is nothing but a doll to nerve. But the connection between Shinji and Rei is that Asuka believes that she is better than the both of them because of their faults. Even though Asuka is proud of her accomplishments, she still hates herself because of the neglectance she suffered as a child. But despite the problems that she suffers, as long as her sync scores were better than her counterparts, then everything is going to be fine because it means that she isn't worthless to everyone else. Eventually, though, her sync scores start to fall below Shinji's and Rei's, and now that she's getting beaten by those two that she believes are less than her, it reminds her of her own worthlessness. This is the beginning of the end of Asuka's mental well-being in Evangelion. At some point, both Shinji and Rei, the two children Asuka constantly bashes, start to pass her. While this doesn't make Asuka a terrible Eva pilot, she is put at a disadvantage, with Shinji's Eva being his own mother and Rei's capability to clone herself. But all of this doesn't matter. If Asuka can no longer be the best, then she is worthless to, and Asuka's fears are realized. That if she can't be an Eva pilot, then she isn't needed, and it feeds to the cycle of self-hatred spun about by her own past. So once Ariel picks apart Asuka's psyche, the angel is able to exploit this and break Asuka down to the point of nothingness. She becomes a husk of the image that she tried to portray, and the saddest part of it all is that even after she goes missing, Nerve doesn't really notice anything. They don't even notice that she's gone until 7 days after, reaffirming that this notion that she really isn't needed by anybody. So in the end of Evangelion, Asuka is left in the worst state possible at the beginning of the film. However, when Asuka has to fight against the angels to prevent the third impact, Asuka would discover that the Eva that she treated like a machine contained the soul of her own mother. What's more, Asuka realizes that she was recognized and loved by her mother, and because of this, Asuka is able to sync with the Eva and use it once again. Even though Asuka dies at the hands of the angels, she dies knowing that she mattered and she died with her own mother. After the third impact had occurred, Asuka decided to return to the real world after rejecting instrumentality. Asuka returned back to the world because she wanted to find her own self-worth and connect with others that before would have been pushed away by her. When Shinji returns and begins to strangle Asuka, she decides to show compassion through a caress and realizes that she can give sympathy as well as accept it from others. Despite the deep insecurities that Asuka has within herself, she still decides to attempt to cover up these glaring problems that she faces. Her self-loathing, her traumatic childhood, her wanting to be needed are all hidden under this facade of a girl who has everything, who is the best, and who cannot be stopped. Until that mask is chipped away bit by bit, and the real person under all of it is revealed. A broken, self-loathing girl who longs for neediness, and if she can't get it, then she deserves to die. But despite the traumatic upbringing that she faces, Asuka is still able to overcome her issues and find a reason to come back and try to find her own self-worth.